Well, hey there, welcome to the channel. I'm Jeff. We are the Animal Donut family. Stock investing is what this channel is all about. There are three elements that go into deciding whether a stock makes sense for a portfolio. This is something that I use, and as far as I know, other investors don't. It's my own kind of personal system, or three factors that I use. They work for me. So I want to share them with you today, and I'm actually going to tell you about the first two. I'm going to ask you to guess what you think the third one is. And before we get rolling on this is not financial advice. This is for your learning and enjoyment purposes. I really love the challenge of finding stocks that are head and shoulders above the rest. There are a lot of turkeys out there. There are a lot of small cap, mid cap, even large cap stocks where the people running the company, where the culture and where the whole business is actually not going, it's not growing in a healthy, positive way. In 5 years, many of the companies in the S&P 500 will be worse than they are today. A lot of investing is just sidestepping the mistakes. It's just avoiding losing money on really bad stocks. If you can do that, if you can just avoid the turkeys, you're going to do well over the long haul. Anyway, here's what I wanted to tell you. In my view, and also before we get started, I know this is kind of I just wanted to say, one of you guys asked a great question. It was Captain Private, and this was, probably 3 or 4 months ago. We were discussing we were discussing Transmedics. It was Transmedics. And you said, did I know of any other companies like Transmedics? By that, he meant companies that are in a niche where no one else is doing what they're doing. Now, for those of you not familiar with this company, it's based right here in Massachusetts. That's where I am today. And this company designs organ support systems for transplant patients. So if you have an organ for donation and it's, let's just say in New York, and it's let's say it's lungs, and it's needed in Texas for somebody who maybe was in an accident, or they're on the transplant list, let's say, that tissue, instead of just being put in a cooler on ice and flown over there, that organ transplant system that Transmedics makes actually perfuses the lungs with oxygen during the travel so that it arrives in a much more physiological, healthy state. And they also work with heart transplants. They do livers. And so I just think that there's just such a need for that kind of thing. And I don't know any other companies that are involved in producing equipment that preserves organs like this for transplant. And the one other thing they do is they've been developing a logistics network in buying helicopters so that they're not only providing the equipment to preserve the organs, they're actually involved in transportation. So he just asked, one of the viewers of this channel, Captain Private, just said, do you know any other companies? I think that's exactly the right kind of question to ask when you're investing. I think an investor who is patient and looks for companies that have a moat, a durable competitive advantage, that are doing something that other companies aren't doing, I think that is one of the key aspects of successful investing. So that brings me back to the question, these three factors. I'm going to tell you about two of them right now. The first one of the three that I use, and the first one that most people use, is the easy one. And that's about 5% of the work of picking stocks, and that's the mathematical approach. The mathematical approach is, looking at the financials, doing whatever kind of math you need to see what the balance sheet looks like, and also just understand the business from a financial point of view. Discounted cash flow models, price to earnings ratios, whatever math you need to get a grasp on the business. But that's very easy, and that's taught in colleges and universities that teach finance and investing. But the much harder part, and I think the meat and potatoes of investing, is the qualitative part, not the quantitative math part, but the qualitative part. And the qualitative involves asking the questions that Captain Private asked, does this business have a moat? Are they doing something no one else is doing? How well can they protect that business from competition? And in the end, I think the question is, can they widen that moat? Can they grow it? If you find a company doing something that's very hard to replicate, that is very hard for other people to come in and take your customers, and you're able to grow that moat and widen it over time, this is a fantastic business. There are not many businesses like that. In fact, I would argue that in a lifetime of your investing or mine, if you could find 3 businesses like that have a moat and are widening it, you're gonna do really well as an investor. So I spend a lot of time on the second factor, which is the qualitative aspects. And these are the kinds of things, if I were talking with a friend, we'd just have a conversation. You'd say, you know, do you think this business is gonna be better in 5 years? Or do you think it's gonna be worse? I'm just gonna take a really obvious example of a business that everybody's heard of, NVIDIA. Full disclosure, I own some shares of NVIDIA. I bought them 5 years ago. They were pretty cheap, I think 13 bucks a throw when I bought them. I did not know exactly how the NVIDIA thing would play out, but that's beside the point. The question is, NVIDIA is dominant right now, but are they going to hold on to that position of dominance in 5 years? These are the kinds of questions you ask. Aspen Aerogels, it's the stock I've talked about. Are they going to be the dominant player in aerogel insulation for EVs? Are there competing companies out there that could do it, could outcompete them on price or, you know, production? They could manufacture more. So that's another question to ask. And I think that just, you know, I did a little extra research last night because I was curious, does Rivian buy from Aspen Aerogels? And my digging showed me that Rivian actually makes their own insulation for their vehicles with an adhesive that actually sticks it to the battery compartments and the batteries themselves. I don't know the details of how it's attached, but I did read about adhesives and insulation. So a company like Rivian can actually do their own insulation for batteries themselves. So I think you actually need to be kind of an expert in the qualitative side. Really, that is endless learning and reading. But if you do it, you're in a better position than any investor who's just sort of picking stocks. I think I read somewhere the average amount of time somebody spends before buying a stock on research is, I think it was between 6 and 7 minutes. So if you can avoid the mistakes they'll make by being sloppy and careless, I think you'll do okay. That's just my opinion. It's kind of how I think about this. So the mathematical part is 5%. That's the quantitative. The qualitative is probably 95% of the meat of investing. But there's a third factor, and I'm not going to reveal it to you guys right here, but I am curious to hear what you think that third factor might be. For me, it helps me to really get a feel for whether this stock makes sense in my portfolio. Because a lot of times you can do a lot of research, you can look at the numbers, you can understand the product or the service, but there's something that has to put you over the edge as far as whether or not you want this in your portfolio. So I'm going to be talking about this throughout the rest of this year. I'm going to focus on this particular factor, but rather than just divulging what it is right now, I'm kind of curious to think, to ask you guys what you use and what you think it might be. And you know, you don't have to particularly like my own approach or my own 3 factors. You probably use your own methodology in coming up with investment ideas. But I have been spending a lot of time thinking, what is it that allows me to put together a portfolio, say 10 stocks, and make a portfolio that's gonna do better than the S&P? Because, man, that's a very hard thing to do. It's really hard if you're managing a large amount of money. Buffett at Berkshire has a hard time beating the S&P because he has so much money to allocate, and you really need big companies to invest in to move the needle. And as we've seen, it's been really hard for Buffett, Todd Combs, and Ted Weschler to find stock investments that are in large companies that they have the confidence to really go in big. Their best investment ever was Apple, without a question. They bought that very cheap many years ago, and as many of you know, they've been selling since, not because Apple's a bad company, just because I think the position got huge and they wanted to raise some cash. In any case, we are in a position where we can actually choose from many other companies. They don't have to be elephants. They can be mice and armadillos and raccoons, bunny rabbits, squirrels. But they can be smaller and faster moving companies. But with those comes a lot of risk. You don't want to buy a company that's small and fragile. You want to find a company that's small and growing. So I'm going to leave off that third factor. I'm going to leave it to you guys to think about a bit. Always love to hear your ideas and your thoughts. I mean, the most fun, I do love making these videos. I love filming them. But I have to say, the most fun part of this whole process is the feedback loop after I've uploaded the video, and then I see comments from you guys. That makes my day. That just makes me very happy. So by all means, you know, like the video, as I often ask you guys to do, because everybody else says, hey, like this. But subscribe if you're one of my viewers who hasn't yet subscribed. I'd love to have you for future videos, and hit the notification bell. And drop a comment below. I've been asking you guys earlier this week to tell me something about yourselves, your hobbies, your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions in life, where you live, that kind of stuff. So if you feel like it and are so inclined, just drop a couple words, tell me something about yourself, because I love to know a little bit about the people who stop and click and watch these videos. Also look forward to hearing from you and figuring out what you think that third factor is. I promise to divulge it. I will talk about this because I think it's the most important factor, at least from my approach. But rather than just spill all the beans right now, I want to know what you guys think. So drop it in the comment section. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me today, and I will see you in the next video.